actually go outside in these things?
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
This little exchange in 2000's X-Men is a telling microcosm of the larger attitude toward superhero costumes during the early 2000s. Throughout this era, lots of heroes were trading in their classic costumes in favor of something new.
I'm looking for something that says, Dad likes leather.
That's right, Tobias. Did you notice this too? Superheroes used to wear a lot of leather 20 years ago. Not like today where it's all canvas and shiny plastic. But why? Why were heroes so ashamed of their brightly colored roots?
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Can you tone down the snarkiness, Scott? Like you don't wish you were covered in your classic yellow-blue design right now? The easy answer to where all this leather came from is, of course, say it together, class.
The Matrix. Existence.
That's right. It's an action movie. It came out in 1999. It's got superheroic qualities. And it had a massive influence on every single Hollywood movie that came after it. But what if I told you that the leather superhero look is more rooted in comics than most people realize? Am I saying that this leather look is actually comic accurate? Not exactly, but there's some neat cultural cross-pollination going on between film and comics during this era. So where did this leather hero look actually start? Well, like everything cool in the comics world, it started with Grant Morrison. And like everything in the 2000s, it started in the 90s. When they weren't moonlighting as a 90s club kid, Grant Morrison spent their days as a rock star comics creator. Redefining the art form with modern sensibilities and avant-garde stories and style, Morrison pushed the boundaries of the postmodern superhero comics trend that Alan Moore pioneered in the 80s with Watchmen. In 1994, Morrison released the first issue of an ongoing series for DC Vertigo called The Invisibles. It's about a conspiracy of interdimensional aliens psychically taking control of the population without them knowing, and one rebellious and incredibly stylish syndicate trying to stop them. Lots of magic with a K, time travel, secret mind control, gender bending, and all around way out there stuff that your angry uncle probably gets very mad at Christmas dinner. In other words, The Invisibles is awesome and way ahead of its time. And of course, every character is serving leather eleganza left and right. Sci-fi comics clad in tight leather, that's the point I'm getting at. Chic fetish gear. Peep some of these outfits, they're so shiny. Leather jackets, of course, but not just the typical grease boomer stuff. Long leather gloves, leather boots, stuff that's made for the sole purpose of, to put it lightly, stepping on subs. Morrison has frequently compared superhero getups to fetish gear, and that approach is very clear in their work on The Invisibles. In my opinion, Morrison's work on The Invisibles, though somewhat lesser known in the mainstream, had a huge influence in the comics world and far beyond. In fact, the influence of Grant Morrison's work continues to ripple throughout the comics industry to this day. If you're a casual reader or you only read modern comics, you might not realize what a huge deal The Invisibles was in the comics world when the book was first coming out, and to a certain extent it still is a huge deal. The looks in the pages of The Invisibles weren't quite mainstream yet, but they were on their way there. This was cutting-edge, edgy cuts of clothes. The counterculture that Morrison came from was bubbling up to the surface just as The Invisibles was coming out, and the leather gear was gonna come along with it. Though they weren't superheroes exactly, these fashionable looks sat on shelves right next to superheroes in tights. There was a clear association between these leather-clad punks and superheroes. Creators and designers probably took note, whether they realized it or not. You're saying, but CinemaCon, The Invisibles isn't a superhero book, it's a new age sci-fi psychedelic 90s punk bible. And I say, thank you viewer, you are so smart and cool for that comment. You know what other piece of media is also a new age sci-fi psychedelic 90s punk bible? The Matrix.
And they were roommates.
We'll get to superheroes, but to paint this leather-clad picture, things have got to get messy. There's tons of similar themes and ideas and aesthetics between The Invisibles and The Matrix because, like I said, there's tons of crisscross pollination going on in comics and movies during this style trend. But let's break it down a little. Humans under mind control, esoteric Gnostic philosophies, sci-fi psychedelia, and of course, leather. Throw all that heady shit out the window. We're talking leather. They're both about leather. One didn't steal from the other. They're different enough, and both have tons of other artistic influences, of course, but The Invisibles definitely had a bit of an influence on The Matrix, if you ask me, especially in terms of fashion sense. That's art, though. Everyone's borrowing and tweaking each other's work. However, the superheroic bridge we've got to cross to go from the Invisibles on the page to the Matrix on the screen isn't so clean. The route to the Matrix follows a little detour along 1998 down a dank alleyway called Blade. That metaphor got really confusing. 1 year before The Matrix came out and made every Gen Xer say, "Whoa, Kung Fu Internet." A year before that happened, we got Blade, 1998. Blade. Folks, we have arrived, superheroes in leather, glorious. Everything has led to this. Blade was the harbinger of modern Marvel, and he arrived in blood-soaked leather, the envy of every goth mall ninja in 1998. While we were out partying and getting laid, this movie was studying the Blade. Blade in the comics has been a longtime supporter of the leather duster, so this wasn't a new look for the character. But it's significant that this look was the first taste that audience got of what a cutting-edge modern superhero looks like. At the time, this style told audiences that this was a serious character, nothing like your granddad's Superman. He's edgy, he's tactical, the leather isn't slick, it's covered in pockets and pouches and straps. Something about this era, people didn't take costumes like Superman seriously anymore. What's with all the color? Where does he keep his wallet? Blade's costume came at a perfect time. It built off the momentum of countercultural looks that were on the verge of making it to the mainstream. Heroic characters in leather were on the fast track to general audiences, and the look was being associated with comic book characters who demand to be taken seriously. Even Superman's suit got a shiny black redesign a few short years before Blade came out. Something was in the air, and it smelt like a Spencer's gift shop. And right when audiences were starting to get a whiff of it, The Matrix happened. 1999. This was the ignition point. Invisibles laid out the tinder, Blade was the spark, but The Matrix was gasoline rain. The Matrix forever changed movies, both in terms of filmmaking techniques as well as fashion. Although the fashion choices might not have aged as well as the former. Black leather, black latex, big dusters that go swoosh when you stretch your back saving the world. You bet your ass costume designers took note. They photocopied the notes, stuck them in a duotang, lined their dusters with it and said, "Hey kids, wanna buy some leather heroes?" Every studio wanted to recapture that Matrix magic, even the studio that released the first Matrix movie. For a very brief period of time after this, the leather duster was the ultimate sign of a badass.
Black leather duster, tough, muscular dude. Underneath it, inside of it, very sexual.
With the commercial success of Blade the year before, superhero movies seemed to be gaining traction. It was only natural for the genre to lean into the style trends that took the world by storm in box office successes like Blade and The Matrix. They probably thought to themselves, how do we make these outlandish concepts work with a 2000s audience? The answer at the time seemed to be leather outfits, baby! The very next year, the year of our Lord 2000, we get X-Men. By today's standards, X-Men 2000 looks like something that would air on the CW, but trust me, this was cutting edge. Actually, come to think of it, the CW superhero shows are still somewhat stuck in the leather era after all this time. We'll talk CW later. X-Men first. So Blade was a little bit of a C-lister, but the X-Men have always been Marvel's flagship super team. Well, until the MCU, but from the 70s until around the 2010s, X-Men was the Marvel super team that everyone knew. And so X-Men was the first A-list massive superhero movie for this new era, and they are dripping in black leather. Not quite as tactical or off the rack as Blade's threads, the X-Men suits are more like custom biker gear. The word custom does a lot of stretching here, as these suits aren't nearly as individually styled as the comics X-Men suits. You see, in the comics, the X-Men have some of the most unique and stylish suits of all time. Each one has a different look that speaks to the character's personality and abilities. That's not really the case in X-Men 2000. They're mostly identical, except for a few little details to tell them apart. Wolverine's got a bit of orange stitching, Storm has a cape, but these costumes are overall the same.
You're a dick. Okay.
It's a little bit disappointing looking back. Does this look have any basis in the X-Men comics? Believe it or not, kind of it does, and it all comes back to Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison wasn't done with leather heroes after the Invisibles. Morrison's New X-Men run features a very similarly dressed X-Men team. New X-Men was a title that started shortly after X-Men 2000 and ran until 2004. It's one of the few X-Men books that even slightly holds a candle to Claremont's iconic 70s run. If you want more modern X-Men, and Hickman's is a little too intimidating to get into right now, start with New X-Men. New X-Men was the modernization of the X-Men for the 2000s, and as I hope is clear by now, modern in the 2000s meant black leather. In the book, you'll see the X-Men sporting similar biker-style clothing, although they sport a much-needed pop of yellow on their torsos in the shape of an X. So until this point, the leather look was kind of an underground alt thing, but once the X-Men was an instant hit, leather was essentially linked to making profitable superhero movies. This was a time when superhero movies were going through a few duds in a row. It was a genre that was looked down upon by audiences. But Blade and X-Men turned the tide, and Hollywood wanted more characters with that same look and feel. The leather outfits at the time created a sense of practicality and realism. Any superhero who was already known for wearing a duster was fast-tracked to the big screen. Hellboy, you're going Hollywood. Constantine, you're going Hollywood. Ghost Rider, you're going Hollywood. Blade got 2 sequels. The X-Men got also many sequels, I'm not gonna count them. Daredevil also got a leather look both on screen and kind of in the comics at the time. I actually like the leather Daredevil look. I think it suits the cut of the costume and emo nature of the character really well. Daredevil's the kind of character who just really wakes you up inside, so the costume should also wake me up inside. This one holds up in my opinion. That bullseye look on the other hand is a little too mall ninja for me. This one does not hold up. Another one that didn't hold up, Catwoman's 2004 suit, does not hold up. Makes you go, hold up, stop. Stop what you're doing. Don't do that.
No! God, please, no!
This one aged like milk left out in your cat's bowl all summer. It started at rock bottom and has dropped down ever since. Just why? What do those 2 straps in particular do? Are they essential? I don't think they're protecting much there. Why is the cut of these pants so utterly unflattering? I don't mean the literal cuts, though those are nasty to look at too. I mean the low waist and the boot cut. The suit is awkwardly caught between fetish and tactical. Tactical fetish, tacti-fetish. Maybe there's a lore reason for this, I don't know, I'm not about to sit down and go through this whole movie for a dumb video. Speaking of DC live action leather though, we have got to talk about the superhero shows on CW. CW, of course, standing for costumes which make me want to hurl sometimes. Not really, there's actually some decent stuff there. But y'all, I feel like people were way too quick to forget that they put Superman in a black leather duster during season 9 of Smallville.
Yeah, it's that.
It's not what I wanted.
What? What? That was just one season though. They had better costumes than the rest of the series, right? Wrong. Take a look at their Justice League. It's a bunch of dudes from the country club wearing their favorite Under Armour outfits. This guy's like, hey, sun's out, guns out, boys. You got the cooler? Let me get a White Claw. Let's get a cherry White Claw. It's Chad, Brad, Trenton, Benton, Liam. Just all of them are out here on the country club. By the last season, they've got Clark wearing a red leather jacket with the Superman S on his chest, which is like, yeah, it's fine, I guess. Could be worse. Could be a black leather duster. More could have been done here, though, without the whole super suit thing. I can accept super civvies, but this look just doesn't appeal to me. CW was pretty hooked on the leather train well into the 2010s. Both of their Green Arrows wore leather head to toe. The Stephen Amell Arrow look is a major improvement costume-wise, but the show is so oppressively covered in leather suits. How does anyone breathe? Star City? More like Chafe City over here, am I right? Same with The Flash. This shit aired in 2015. And this man is hitting the Speed Force in a leather onesie. Okay, I'll make the logical leap and accept that the Flash can run backwards in time. He can break time, he moves so quick. I accept that. This is true. I refuse to accept that any reasonable human being is able to comfortably run in a completely leather outfit from head to toe. The Flash suit got better as time went on, opting for a canvas material that's more in line with modern superheroes. But the first suit, just hang on. The first suit, though, was made well into the modern era. It came out the same year as Age of Ultron.
That's the best you can do!
I don't know what they were thinking over at CW. It looks bad and somehow more impractical than this. It's so weird because initially I got the impression that these leather suits were the costume designer's way of making superhero suits more believable and realistic for the 2000s audiences. But in pushing this leather look to its limits, we got optic assaults like the Flash in this Catwoman suit. And you know, not every superhero was leather head to toe throughout the 2000s. There were good exceptions. The Fantastic Four had on blue spandex that was genuinely accurate to the character's comics looks at the time. The 2000s Batman movies also did a great job of keeping the costume accurate to the comics, but still making it feel modern and practical. He's just a ninja with some bat ears and little bits of tactical armor. Especially the suit in The Dark Knight, I really like that one. But obviously, the hero who lifted us all out of this dark leather trend, way ahead of his times, was, without a doubt, Spider-Man. Pretty much during the height of the leather era, surrounded by peers who were too ashamed to show superheroes in their bold, colorful drip, Sam Raimi and his costume department went all out on Spider-Man's iconic look. Is it the best on-screen Spider-Man look? Some would say no, but we're looking at 2002 standards right now, and in 2002, every other superhero was dressed like this in movies, whereas on the page, they dressed like this. But this Spider-Man didn't compromise. Saturated blue and red latex, bold webbing that can't be ignored, all the big screen superhero trends were pushing towards a Spider-Man movie that looks like this, and I am so glad we got one that looks like this. I think that the brightly colored costumes of the Marvel Cinematic Universe owe a lot to the bold design of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies. We might have never gotten page-accurate looks if these costume artists didn't just absolutely send it for the first Spider-Man movie. If it wasn't for Raimi's Spider-Man, we might be watching an Avengers team in all-black matching leather biker outfits. Nowadays, leather and stretchy spandex aren't the real superhero look anymore. The leather look has basically disappeared from live-action superheroes, although God knows the Flash clinged onto it for dear life. For the most part, MCU characters wear this canvas material that must be overstock and on sale in their world. DC characters are kind of similar. I feel like they wear a lot more plastic-looking shells with a shiny or canvas texture on top, but very similar materials. They're all high quality and saturated. I like it a lot, especially in comparison to the superhero costumes I grew up watching on screen. I used to watch X-Men as a kid and I would just wish they were as colorful as my comics and action figures. I saw Avengers and I was like, finally! Superhero suits on screen are vibrant. Yeah, Cap looks kinda doofy, but wearing an American flag is doofy as hell, and that's who Steve is. With all that said, I do kinda think there's still a bit of design lessons that current superhero costumes could learn from the 2000s leather trend. I think that superhero costumes today could use a little more variety and even a bit more weirdness. They don't all have to be plastic shells or canvas. I definitely don't want them to go full leather tactical on every character again, but maybe just a bit of leather and a hint of fetish. More fetish than tactical. I don't need to be beat over the head with pouches and straps, but let's get weird.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
These are godly people with an obvious taste for theatrics. There's so much variety in looks and art styles, from hero to hero, comic to comic. I'd love to see costume design reflect that a little more on the big screen, instead of leaning on current trends. In comics, people refer to the different eras as the Golden Age, the Silver Age, and the Bronze Age. I don't know what fans are calling the current superhero movie eras yet, but I'll always think of the 2000s as the Leather Age.
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
If you made it this far into the video, leave me a comment that says, Daddy likes leather. Thanks for listening to me hyperfixate on these leather suits for really no reason at all. Also, if you like this kind of topic, check out my video about 2000s movie trends. It's probably on screen right now. This was in part made possible by my generous patrons, Jaime Cadena, Jack Hussey, and Greta Harris. I really appreciate your support. Appreciate ya for sticking around.